Everyone, great to meet you all. I'm Harrison, co-founder and chief customer officer at Paddle, and I'd love to introduce you to a good friend and Paddle customer, Alexander Kosovan, founder of MacPaw.
Hi everyone, great to be here.
You'll be hearing a lot from Alexander at the end of this webinar when he joins me for a Q&A in a fireside chat. It's a pleasure to be talking to you all today about how we can make the move to software as a service, also known as SaaS. Before we get started, some short information on Paddle before we begin. Paddle is a SaaS commerce platform. We handle checkout, payments, invoicing, tax, billing, and more for software companies. We do this so they can focus on growing their business without getting held back by tooling and infrastructure. We're so proud to work with thousands of software companies across the globe, including MacPaw, who we'll discuss later today, as well as many companies here in China. We're very honored to have relationships with iMobi, DVD Fab, Peaksoft, PhoneDog, and many, many more. In terms of what we'll discuss during this webinar, we will begin by setting the scene as to how many companies in China are running their businesses today. It's important that I explain how things are operating today for Chinese software sellers before I go on to articulate how this current way of working and how we currently measure our success will have to fundamentally change in order to be successful in a SaaS environment. We will cover the journey MacPaw went on as a hugely successful software company based out of Kiev in Ukraine. Most importantly, sharing the steps that MacPaw took in order to successfully launch Clean My Mac X, their flagship product with a SaaS business model. I hope that you all can take these steps away and apply them to your own products in the future. Once we've shared these learnings, I will have a fireside chat with Alexander to discuss the experience on MacPaw's side. So let's get into it. Firstly, I wanted to share a visual representation of how most CEOs and business owners are thinking about growing their non-SaaS software business today. You all start by investing a huge amount of money and time in the initial development of the product. You do this in the hope that at the time of release, there is a huge spike in sales, which covers the cost of this initial development. This spike in sales slows down over time after that initial launch buzz has subsided. Thereafter, you work extremely hard to launch a major new version of the product. This is the second spike that you're seeing on the graph in front of you. This results in a number of paid upgrades from existing customers, as well as a spike in net new customers. We repeat this process over time across many product lines. We repeat it every year, adding more and more products to our roster or lineup. I'm sure this is something that's familiar with all of you, from the high cost of initial development through to the anticipation of how a new product launch will perform. I expect you'll be all measuring success around this approach in a very similar way. You'll be asking yourselves, how many net new customers am I acquiring each month? Many of you will have a freemium model. How well are the free customers converting into paid ones? Or how well are my website visits converting into paid customers? These are the key metrics we all understand and work with our teams on every day. Some of you may also be looking at repeat purchase rates. How many of my customers go on to purchase another product in my lineup? This can be a huge driver of revenue, and again, something we'll discuss more later. Some of you may also be looking at the percentage of existing customers who go on to upgrade, trying to improve that percentage of upgrading customers every year. You may even be running retargeting campaigns at existing customers who have not yet upgraded via email and in-app. This is something our account managers have powerful strategies for, and I'd love to discuss with you. Now, there are inherent risks to this approach. There is a high cost of development when building products, and there's a risk the product launch will not be successful. Even if you do manage to recover the return on investment at the launch, we're then reliant on successful major new paid upgrades in order to sustain the products in the long term. it becomes very challenging as business owners to predict how well paid upgrades will perform given changing market conditions, new competition, and more. And over many years, constantly needing to invent new functionality can become challenging. And without the predictability into how launches or paid upgrades will perform, it becomes very difficult for us as business owners to model our cash flow and predict where our business will be. SaaS requires a change of mindset. The move to SaaS looks at 3 growth levers in order to be successful. Firstly, acquisition. Now, this is mainly what we were looking at before. How do we acquire new paying customers for our products? There's no change here. Next, in SaaS, we start to look at retention. SaaS, or software as a service, is typically charged on a recurring basis. A customer pays and then is automatically charged again in a month or a year's time. Retention looks at how many customers and how much money we can automatically charge the same set of customers each month or each year. Since customers are charged this frequently, the retention becomes predictable and a key driver of growth. The last growth lever in SaaS is expansion. This can become a huge driver of revenue. Expansion looks at how we can increase the amount of money being spent by each customer we have acquired. Once we've acquired them and we've retained them and we're automatically charging them every month, how do we make more money per customer? These are the ways in which you should think about growing a SaaS business. And typically, a SaaS company will evolve through these stages. They start by working out how to acquire customers. They then ensure they're retaining them effectively. They then work out how to make more money per customer. And at some point, expansion, i.e. upselling and cross-selling to the existing customer base, can become the largest driver of revenue. Truthfully, I think expansion revenue is a huge untapped opportunity, even in the non-SaaS environment. And this will be the topic of our next webinar, which I hope you all attend in a few weeks' time. So now that we understand the ways in which we grow a SaaS business, how do we measure the success of each of these growth levers? For acquisition, you're looking at some similar stuff as before. How many net new customers am I acquiring every month? How much new revenue am I getting each month? You'll even look at conversion rates. And if you have a freemium model, you may look at how many people who enter your free trial become paid customers, or you could continue to look at how many of my website visitors become paying customers. These are familiar metrics, and they're no different to what you've been working on so far. With retention, things are a little bit different. There are 2 types of retention you will look at when running a SaaS business. There is customer retention. This is a measure of how many customers are sticking with us compared to the last period. And then there is dollar retention. How much money from the same set of customers are we making this period, maybe this month, compared to the last one? The reason there is a difference between those figures is because in SaaS, many introduce other price points or plans or tiers of pricing. This means that not every customer is paying the same amount. For expansion, we look at a number of different things. Firstly, MRR, or monthly recurring revenue. This is a key metric for any SaaS business as a measure of overall success. What is our total recurring revenue we're expecting to charge in 30 days? Specifically with expansion, we look at expansion and contraction MRR. Expansion MRR looks at whether the amount of money or revenue we're able to charge a set of accounts or customers has increased over the previous 30 days. This figure will increase if customers are being upsold or cross-sold new plans or new products. Perhaps they're increasing usage of the product or buying other products of yours. Contraction MRR is the opposite. This looks at whether the amount of money or revenue we're able to charge a set of customers has decreased over the period, over the 30-day period. This is driven by existing customers canceling or churning from your SaaS subscription. This means your retention will decrease, or by customers downgrading, if that option is available to them. Two additional metrics related to expansion are average revenue per user. This is sometimes called ARPU, a measure of how much money on average we make per customer. Again, we look to increase this figure by cross-selling and upselling. And lastly, we have lifetime value, also called LTV. This is a more complex calculation. It looks at the amount of money you expect to make from a customer. It looks at the rate at which you should expect customers to churn. We then calculate how much money you can expect from a customer over their lifetime in paying for your product. This is a longer term view than average revenue per user. In understanding how much money you can expect to make from a customer over the lifetime as a paying customer, you can understand how much you can spend on acquiring them. You need to make sure your cost of acquisition, the amount of money you spend to get a new customer, is less than your lifetime value to ensure that you're making a profit on each customer. If you nail all three of these SaaS growth levers, the results are phenomenal. Here in front of you, you can see an example of a real life paddle seller that we have anonymized for privacy reasons. This particular customer has worked out an effective channel to acquire customers. This is the blue bar that you can see at the bottom of your screen. The gray bar shows you the percentage of revenue each month that the customer has been able to charge on renewals from existing customers, the customers they've been able to retain. The green bar shows you how much money they're making each month through expansion, i.e. cross-selling or upselling existing customers. The three growth levers stack up to really drive revenue forward and grow this business effectively. Over time, if we will continue to look at these figures, you'd see that retention and expansion often grow to become the largest chunks of revenue. It becomes easier to retain customers and cross-sell new items or upgrade existing customers. It's easier to do that than to continue to acquire new ones. This is something that many see over a long period of time. Now, expansion is a hugely untapped revenue driver. The slides here say expansion is the most impactful revenue driver, but of course, it is reliant on our ability to acquire customers and retain them in the first place. At the very least, from my perspective, it is a missed opportunity for those running SaaS businesses, as well as non-SaaS businesses like yours today. Expansion and cross-sell should be considered when selling licenses with annual upgrades, as many of you listening are today, as well as if selling in the SaaS environment. And I really wanted to spend a little bit of time on this and demonstrate it to you with an example. So what are we looking at in front of us? Let me talk you through this. So seller A, the blue bar, who is seeing standard growth, I'm going to begin with. Seller A managed to turn his or her site visits into 5,000 sales per month. Over 1 quarter, they end up with 20,000 sales, and over 1 year, they end up with 60,000 sales. Let's consider seller B, the gray bar. Seller B has the same amount of site traffic as seller A, the blue bar. However, they have improved conversion rates on this traffic by 35%. This means they make more transactions or more sales from the same amount of traffic as seller A. In 1 quarter, things look close, but over time, they end up with 80,000 sales instead of 60,000. Now let's consider seller C. This is the green bar. Seller C has the same amount of traffic as seller A and seller B. But rather than focusing on increasing conversion rates on this traffic, instead, they focus on ensuring that 10% of their customers buy 1 additional item each month, with no increase in conversion and standard growth. This is a huge success for them. Even without any conversion improvement, if every month they ensure that 10% of their customers buy at least 1 other product, they end up with 110,000 transactions. This shows you how powerful expansion can be when driven by cross-sell and upsell. Today, the main focus of all of the Chinese software sellers we work with focuses on improving conversion. For some sellers in the audience, I'm very proud that we have improved conversion rates for them by 35% in their key markets on our competitors like 2Checkout. We have taken them from the blue line to the green line. We'll be thrilled to do the same for others in the audience. Next, the focus will be on helping these sellers more successfully cross-sell and upsell and drive expansion within their existing customer base, given what a huge impact this can have on performance. And again, we'll be covering this topic in a lot more detail in our next webinar. Going back to SaaS, there are a number of other benefits. Given that customers are paying when using a SaaS model automatically every month or every quarter or every year, you can roll out features when they are built, staying ahead of your competition. You no longer have to hold features back for your major new version, which may be many months away. This is a huge benefit to the customer. We get new features faster, and it results in a better user experience. Also, SaaS models are more predictable. Your acquisition and retention become consistent over time, which allows you to better predict business performance and run your business more effectively. So now we've learned about SaaS and what we should focus on, what will drive revenue, and how we measure our success. How do we make the move to this model from what we're doing today? MacPaw's story is a great example of the steps that you can take. We'll have the chance to ask Alexander a number of questions about this at the end of the presentation in the fireside chat. But very briefly, from my perspective, Alexander founded MacPaw, the company, and programmed Clean My Mac himself in 2008. It ran a standard license model with customers paying for upgrades each year. In 2017, MacPaw moved over to Paddle. They wanted to benefit from the impact our checkout experience and improved conversion we could offer them, as well as the expertise of our team. Meanwhile, he was considering a move to subscriptions, which Paddle provides the best support for out of the merchant of record and payment options on the market. In 2018, the steps for the move to SaaS began. MacPaw experimented by adding the ability to pay for Clean My Mac on a recurring basis. They were experimenting with the SaaS model for access or automatic access to future versions. They're experimenting with making this offer exclusive on the page, above the one-time offer, and in many different ways. We will talk about the results and what they meant in just a moment. In late 2018, they launched Clean My Mac X with a SaaS pricing model. It was a huge success, and we can dig a little bit deeper into what happened. To begin with, checkout conversion rate dropped. MacPaw experimented with putting the SaaS model or the subscription at the top of their store page, at the center of their store page, and in lots of different ways. What they saw was, when they pushed more and more users to pay through the SaaS model, they saw that conversion rate for these customers dropped by around 15%. This is something to expect. In asking customers to commit to paying for something annually, quarterly, or monthly, your conversion rate on the checkout will drop. This is not something you can avoid, and there will be a short-term drop in revenues. However, you can recover this drop in revenue. You can get these customers back or make more money. If you're able to retain the customers who purchase your subscription and you're able to automatically charge them again when the renewal comes around, if your customer retention figure is higher than the drop in conversions, you'll be financially better off and you'll make more money. Now, we'll talk about this in the Q&A in just a few moments, but Alexander and his team believed that they could retain more than 15% of their customers when the renewal came around. Thus, they would make more money in the long term despite the initial drop in revenue. And they launched Clean My Mac X in 2018 with a SaaS model as the main offer. But what happened? It was a huge success. The blue bar indicates those who have been purchasing on a one-time basis. These aren't the customers paying via the SaaS model, one they didn't even introduce until 2018. The white bar indicates those purchasing Clean My Mac with a SaaS subscription. We see a huge lift in these with the launch of Clean My Mac X in Q3 2018. Now the green bar indicates the renewals. These are the customers they were able to retain and were able to charge automatically after 1 year. You can quickly see how the SaaS customers you have and retain automatically renewing their SaaS subscription every year can quickly become one of the biggest drivers of revenue for you. Even more so over time than new subscribers or newly acquired customers. Using Paddle's platform and work with account managers, as well as building a fantastic product used and loved by many, MacPaw were able to far exceed the 15% renewal target per the previous slide. Instead, they hit a renewal rate of around 75%. This means that 75% of the customers who subscribed when Clean My Mac X was launched with a SaaS model, 75% of them, they were able to automatically charge 1 year later. This means that over the 2 years since moving to SaaS and recurring billing, MacPaw have grown 200%. Whilst there was an initial drop in revenue, the incredible retention of customers when their first set of renewals came around and their ability to continue to acquire customers effectively have meant they have grown 200%. It's an amazing story, and we're truly proud and honored to be a part of it alongside Alexander and the MacPaw team. Before we discuss what's next, a quick reminder of the steps to take when considering a move to SaaS. Like MacPaw, experiment with the recurring billing model or the SaaS model with your existing product line. Our account managers can give you advice on how to do this effectively. You will need to look at the percentage drop off you see in conversions or revenue, because there will be a short-term drop. You need to look to recover this percentage drop in your retention stats. This is your target for the amount of customers you should look to retain when the renewal comes around. Once you've achieved these things, like MacPaw, we can then start to look at expansion as the next driver of revenue. Now that MacPaw have nailed customer acquisition and retention, how can we improve lifetime value and average revenue per user through expansion? The idea from MacPaw's perspective, and again, we'll ask some more questions about this in a few moments, is the move to the MacPaw customer cabinet. There are plans to move customers to access and manage products through an account and user login rather than a license. This is a great experience for the customers. They call it the MacPaw customer cabinet, and you can see it on screen. It's worth noting that this is in beta and isn't fully rolled out yet, and may evolve over time as far as I understand. From the customer cabinet, customers will be able to manage their subscription, update their billing information, which is really important as we try to charge customers each year. But importantly for MacPaw, it's also a place in which customers can upgrade their plan. MacPaw and Clean My Mac, their plans allow for a number of different devices to have Clean My Mac installed. The plan on screen allows for 5 installations of Clean My Mac on your devices. Another plan may allow for 10 installations, for example. In the cabinet area, you can manage these devices or pay for additional ones. It offers a great user experience and a chance for the customer to manage what they've purchased, but also upgrade and add more licenses or more devices in the future. For MacPaw, a license equates to a number of installations on certain devices. Here you can see some screenshots of this in action. In front of me, I've got the management of some of these devices and users. And in this screenshot, you can see how not all of those are used at any one time, and you may be able to invite folks to do so. Alexander will be able to talk about this stuff in a lot more detail during the Q&A. Now, To round off, the idea of expansion works really well in SaaS. Experiences like the MacPaw customer cabinet are successful because in order for the SaaS model to work, we need to save the customer's payment details. The payment details need to be saved so that we can automatically charge the customer when the renewal comes around. Because we have these saved payment details, like a credit card, customers do not need to re-enter their payment details when we look to cross-sell them a new product or we ask them to upgrade their plan. This means that we can cross-sell new products or allow customers to upgrade in one click. And thus, this approach can become a huge driver of revenue per the graphs earlier. Let me share with you another example of how you might approach expansion in the SaaS environment. Perhaps you start with a generic store page, like the mock-up you're looking at in front of you. The customer can open the checkout to purchase a product. Once that purchase is complete, the customer will be notified. Excuse me, in front of me beforehand, here is an example of how a checkout may look different depending on the experience we're offering. This is something we're testing all the time at Paddle. Here, a customer is simply saving a card so that they're able to be charged for future products moving forward. Other times, you may take a customer through purchasing a product and save the card at that point. This is something we're testing all the time. In any case, once the purchase is complete, the customer is notified. Thereafter, the customer can be pushed to an account area to manage their purchase. This is a mock-up, but we also just looked at the MacPaw customer cabinet as an example of this. Importantly, complementary products can be shown within this account area. MacPaw had a real focus on allowing customers to manage their devices and potentially upgrade their plan. In this example, we're showcasing a number of add-ons that a customer may want to purchase, having enrolled in an initial SaaS subscription. But it could just be other complementary products. Now, because we have saved the card, we can cross-sell these products in one click. When a customer hits buy, we can deliver a one-click purchase experience. And once purchased, the customer can manage that additional product in the same account area. Again, this is going to be a real topic that we dive into for both SaaS companies and non-SaaS companies in our next webinar. To summarize, the move to SaaS requires a change in mindset. Acquisition is the focus of many of you today. We need to expand on this and recognize retention and expansion will become even bigger revenue drivers with the move to SaaS. There are also brand new ways to measure our success. These go beyond basic measures of conversion, which we're using today. We need to begin looking at stats around retention and expansion too. These give us a look at our overall business success and health in the new SaaS world. Paddle is uniquely positioned to advise software companies through the move to SaaS, and we'd love to discuss this with those listening today. We've done this with MacPaw, Fornova, many other sellers, and many of them picked us due to our expertise in SaaS and the move to it. We've built Paddle with subscriptions and software as a service in mind. We are best in class for SaaS on the merchant record and payments market. And we would love to guide you through some of the steps MacPaw have taken, from the experimentation with the recurring billing model through to the successful launch of a software as a service product. We have a number of case studies available of those who are running a SaaS model today: RenderForest, Ozlogics, Put.io. These have all been translated, and I'd love for you to read them. We'll now have the chance to run a Q&A with Alexander.
Thank you, Harrison.
Hey, how's it going, Alexander?
I'm good, thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know if you want to offer any additional commentary just on what you've heard there before we start talking into the journey you went on. I'd love to perhaps start by asking you, why were you interested in SaaS and that model? Where did your thinking around this stuff begin?
Yeah, there are actually a few things that I wanted to add to the presentation, and one of them about the mind shift. When you're shifting from a licensing model to a subscription model, you have to think not only about how the customers will be charged and how you can upsell them, but actually from the product perspective about the retention. And this is like a major difference comparing when you have to sell only one license once, and in a few years, for example, charge for additional upgrade. So this was like probably the biggest challenge for our team to shift this mindset into the subscription. So previously we were focusing on the funnel, on all of the steps before and including the purchase, like for example, how to optimize landing pages, where to get customers, how to create the best trial or best purchase experience. But with the subscriptions, our focus shifted to how to keep our existing customers happy and how to increase retention among our users and convince them to stay longer with the product. And therefore, we have to think how to continuously excite and deliver new value to the existing customers. And I would say like it was like a major big difference into this approach.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's articulating not just thinking about acquisition and those funnels and that for the first time through to that shift in mindset for retention. What types of things did you do to, or did you try to make your retention as high as possible? How did you think about exciting those existing customers and ensuring they stuck around each year?
Well, it's easy to say like create a great product, but in reality, it is much more complicated. And first of all, you have to listen to your customers, you have to interview them, you have to understand what are their needs and what are they actually using in the product. And this is like a continuous process where you have to monitor different metrics, influence them, and do it all over again. And this is how we achieved like a really huge retention rate in our product, which in the end resulted in 75% of renewal rate. So it was actually almost similar to what we had in the product. How many customers came back every month to our product resulted in the same number of customers renewing the subscription.
That's fantastic. Basically, anyone using the product was willing to pay for it, which is real evidence of its quality. Your comment on interviewing customers is really interesting, and I imagine it could be something that some of our Chinese software sellers listening in could struggle with today due to language barriers and things of that nature, because markets like the US are very large for some of the software sellers listening today. How did you go about interviewing those customers? What did that process look like?
This could be, for example, if we are working on some new functionality and we don't know yet what are the real customers and how they will use this functionality. So we're trying to find like a best customer match. It could be from 10 to 20 customers maybe, in order to get their early feeling on this functionality. Do they need it? How do they have this problem or not? So this is one way. Another way is when we try to research the market in general. For example, what problems do we want to solve on the Mac machines, for example? And this is where an external agencies could help a lot. So we don't have to necessarily do all the work on ourselves. We can request some research from external agency and receive the filtered and analyzed results. And this helps us to build a better messaging to the customer, to build a better functionality and deliver a better product.
That's amazing. Yeah, understanding of the customer is key. When I want to start to understand when you started thinking about the move to SaaS, and maybe you thought about it as a as something you should be interested in as a result of these interviews or that research. But when did you start to get interested in the model for Climo Mac?
Yeah, so it's actually a very long story. I started the company about 12 years ago from the release of Climo Mac 1. And the next version we had in mind, we wanted to deliver it for free to our customers. So the measure upgrade should be free for everyone, but we wanted to sell in-app purchases. And it turned out to be that the purchase flow is an extremely important. So every additional step in the purchase flow reduces the conversion rates. And we analyzed what we had and understood that it will be like a huge drop in the purchases. So we had to release like a free upgrade without any in-app purchases. And this was even before the App Store. With App Store, App Store has all of the credit details already, so you can just one click and you have an in-app purchase. It was like early days of MacPaw. So Climo Mac 3 was already like our first big success because it was a first major paid upgrade. And we probably, the months when we released it was one of the most successful months in history of a company.
Wow.
So it was great, but the timing for these releases was about 3 years. So every 3 years we had a major upgrade, which was definitely too long. So we started to consider how to speed up this process, and the subscription solution is like the best to solve this problem. So we don't have to delay a lot of functionality in order to build a big measure upgrade. We can roll out as soon as we have something for the customers, and this is great for the customers. And the release cycles are reducing, comparing how you will charge customers, like monthly or yearly. In our case, it's yearly. So the subscription model should have speed up this process. So and that's why we were extremely interested into switching to a subscription model.
That makes lots of sense. We looked at that graph right at the start of the webinar of the cost of development and then the big spikes in sales when you released those major versions. But waiting 3 years between those, I imagine was. Did it feel risky, or were there concerns as to whether people would adopt? Like, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, every time it was like a very big effort from our team because we wanted the new version to be perfect. We wanted to simplify the upgrade flow. And again, when you sell it as a separate purchase, the customers have to enter their credit card details again and again. And this is where you lose customers. With the subscription, the credit card is already on file, and basically like with the help of Paddle or similar providers, the credit card get charged automatically. So it reduces huge amount of churn and increases revenue.
It makes sense.